Welcome everyone to day 21 of my 100-day project. I am starting with oil paint. And I have to say I was a little bit nervous because typically when I paint with oil, I'm using cold wax medium mixed in with it, which is a very different painting experience. Or I'm using oil sticks, which are not the same as oil pastel, and I'll have a whole 10 days devoted to oil sticks and drawing oils. So for this 10 days, I really wanted to use oil paint with a brush for the most part, something I don't do very often. So I'm using these Senso, I think is the name of them. I showed at the beginning. These are all universal primed linen panels, but they're clear primed so you can see the background, and I really like that idea. I usually like to have some sort of colored ground when I'm working with oil or acrylic, either way. So I'm going to use these for a few days and see what I think. They're panels. They're 5x7, same size I've been using, but I like them. I've used them with acrylic ink before. But I'm setting up my palette over here off to the side. So I'm using some solvent-free gel by Gamblin. And then I'm using a mix of Gamblin in titanium white. There's my palette. I've got some Williamsburg colors in pyrrole orange, pyrrole red, a rose color, which is gorgeous. And then I've got a phthalo turquoise in Winsor and Newton, and a cinnabar green light in Williamsburg. And I think that's everything on my palette. So a bismuth yellow, did I say that? So I've got essentially a primary palette, and I had no idea what I was going to paint today. I just started making marks, and all of a sudden, boom, right there, I saw a face. And I thought, okay, here we go. I see what I'm painting now. And this is what's great about setting an intention and going with your intuition, because it will never fail you. And so here's my funky sort of face. And at first I thought it was going to be a bearded face, and I could have totally done that, but I ended up going in a different direction. But this one took me a little bit longer than some of the others, especially the watercolors I've been doing the last few days, because I'm rebuilding the muscle memory with oil. So I'm mixing some colors off to the right. I'll lay some color down, and I'm reminding myself of how to work with oils and to not brush back and forth on the surface so that my colors mix too much and make mud, and just all the things, trying to keep the strokes really light. I'm using that solvent-free gel, and I might use a little bit less of it tomorrow. I felt like it made my paints flow really well, which I liked. But towards the end, when I wanted to get more stronger brush marks and a little bit more texture, I was finding that it was challenging for me to do that. And so I think I would have had an easier time if I used less of the gel. And I could have gone into, at the end when I'm working on the eyes, for example, and I wanted more texture, I could have just gone into some of the piles of paint there and not the piles I had mixed up with the gel in it. And I wasn't using a huge amount of gel, but I did end up putting more out because I mixed colors more than I thought I would. I've been working in watercolor and acrylic ink, and typically I don't blend those on a palette. I let those blend on the surface. With watercolor, I'll mix some colors, and sometimes I'll do that with acrylic ink, but I do a lot of just letting the medium do its magic on the surface. So I did find myself mixing a lot more colors with the oil, and so I went through a little bit more gel than I thought. So look at that pink, is that rose color, which is just fabulous. So I didn't really use much of the red. I used that pink as my red for most of it. But I just love how funky this character is. It's got like a David Bowie kind of vibe to it, which I love. I love that it's quirky, and I love the brush strokes. And I was sitting here and I was just like, Every time I paint with oil paint in this way, more traditionally with a brush, every time I do it, I find myself going, I love oil paint. Like, why don't I do this more often? I don't know why. I don't know why I don't, but I know for the next 9 days I will. So I'm really excited about it. I do really love the look. I do really love the brush strokes and kind of, I don't even know the term I'm looking for, but there's a very specific quality that you get with oil paint that you really don't see with other mediums. And I'm sure during these 9 days, I'll pull out some cold wax and I'll do something with cold wax, which will look and feel completely different because the way the paint works with that medium is very different. And the tools you use are different. You can use brushes, but I usually don't. So that's going to be interesting to work on something this size with oil and cold wax. So we'll see where that goes. But I also have some water mixable oils that I haven't tried yet. So I might bring some of those up and do some of that as well. And that will be interesting to try. But I've got little puddles of paint and some mixed up color on this palette. And so I might just stick with that for a day or two to use up that paint. I always end up with several paintings that sort of go together because I'm using the same palette and cleaning off my palette on those other surfaces. So we'll see what these next few days look like. And I'm just kind of going in here and touching up some of the shadows, getting some of my values a little bit darker. And again, just reminding myself what it's like to work with oils. So trying not to touch too much. I also don't tend to clean my brush with cleaner as I'm painting. You'll see me reach over the painting very frequently. And what I'm doing is I'm cleaning off the color on like a shop towel that's off to the side there. And I don't want to thin out my paint. So I'm just getting off the bulk of the color on the paper towel. And I'm using two brushes. One is a fairly small flat, and the other one is a fairly large filbert. And it's interesting because I don't use that shape, filbert, in any other medium, only oil. And the only reason why I grabbed it was because I probably have some flats downstairs that I might need to get and bring them up here, but I didn't have one in the size I was looking for up here, so I used the filbert. And it was okay. I just feel like I really like flats because I can use the corner. So I can get really small, fine marks, even with a fairly large flat brush, because I can use the corner. And I did bring a round with me that I didn't end up using because it was a little bit bigger than I wanted. So all part of the learning curve and reacquainting myself with this as I go. And just refining the nose a bit, getting that shape together. His mouth is, I kind of didn't put a lot of detail in it, and I thought about it, but then decided I was going to leave it like that, just to bring more attention. I really loved the eye, especially that one big eye that sort of turned towards us. I really loved that, and so I thought that's what I'm going to focus on and play up. Then I was deciding, do I leave that background, that linen color? And I wanted to bring in a little bit more contrast. So this is a little bit of red, that pyrrole red, a little bit of orange that was on my brush, and some titanium white. And I start to bring in some of that phthalo turquoise to darken it up a little bit. I probably could have gone even darker on the background on that side. I just wanted to keep that contrast, and the eye was fairly dark, so I wanted to have that be dark. So that's why I didn't go too dark on that background, but I could have. And then what I did is I took a look at it. I took my camera down and was ready to be done, and then I realized I wanted to add some white around the eyes. So I ended up doing that off camera, so I'm sorry about that. So here is, you can see I added a little bit of, well, it's not really white, but a cornea around the eyes. It was just sort of that orange. But you'll notice what I'm showing here. One of the things I love about oil paint is you can scratch into it. So I've scratched into his hair and the background and some of his skin. Him, her, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but I'm just sticking with the David Bowie kind of vibe is what it looks like. I don't know why these stills always look so dark, but there is like uber contrast right there. But there's my first day of oil paint. I'm super, super excited about it. I can't wait to dig in more and see where this goes. I have a feeling these next 9 faces are going to be funky, and I love it. So I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.